Okay. Parshas Mishpatim. We have a lot of the laws, civil laws, in this week's parsha. And there are 47 mitzvahs in this week's parsha out of the 613, so it's action-packed. Action-packed. But why specifically now do we read about the civil laws? We have the laws of watchmen, the laws of stealing, the laws of a slave, things like that. Why specifically now in the Torah this has come up? So what did we have last week? Last week, Parshas Yisro, the seltzer in the child. Parshas Yisro, we talked about the giving of the Torah, the most important thing that ever happened in human history. So, when the Torah was given, it was really also the Ten Commandments that were given. So the Ramban says very simply, one of the Ten Commandments is don't covet, don't steal. So that explains why you have to know the property laws. And also this week's parsha talks about the laws of idolatry, honoring parents, adultery. Those are all part of the Ten Commandments. And the Ramban writes that since we got the Ten Commandments, now we have to explain all the details of all the laws that come out from it. Because the Ten Commandments themselves are really you can really include the entire Torah in the Ten Commandments, but since there were specific mitzvahs about civil laws, that's why this week's parsha came right after the giving of the Torah. There's another reason. There's a medrash in Shmos Rabbah that says as follows. It says that before the Torah was given, we had certain laws that were given when the Jews were in Mara. Before the actual Torah was given, we were given certain laws. Then the Torah was given, and then we were given more laws in Parshas Mishpatim this week. So we have laws before the Torah was given, and laws after the Torah was given. So he says like this. It's a parable. Mashal HaMachanisa. Shahaisa Mahalechas Hazin Mikan V'Hazin Mikan V'Hi Ba'amsa. It says the parable is that a queen, when she has a parade, she has soldiers march in front of her, then comes the queen, and then soldiers come behind her. So he says, the Medrash says, that the giving of the Torah is the queen. The laws that were given before the Torah was given, those are the soldiers that go before her, and the laws that were given after the Torah was given are the soldiers that come after her. What's the deal? What does this represent? So Maharsha Shiva explained that before the Torah was given, we had to be given certain laws, because a condition to get the Torah is to not be selfish, to think about other people. Right? Civil law is really thinking about other people, how a society is going to function. So you want to be a people that's a spiritual people that's going to get close to Hashem. The only way you can get close to Hashem is if you get along with other people and you become a selfless person and you're not only thinking about yourself. Without that condition, it is impossible to receive the Torah, it's impossible to be a good Jew, and it's impossible to fulfill the Torah and get close to God. That's what the soldiers before the queen represent. Now the soldiers after the queen represent as follows. There's a difference of how in Judaism we view civil laws and how the secular world looks at civil laws. Civil laws in the United States of America, besides being super corrupt, the justice system, it's really crazy. I started reading different things, especially like about Rubashkin. Hi, how are you? Hi, alaikum salam. It's a very good challenge this week.
Yeah, this week.
Yes, just bashing the justice system. Yeah. It's so corrupt. You see, they go after politicians, whether it's Democrats or Republicans.
I can't wait for that.
Right. You think that it's supposed to be equal justice under the law, justice blind with the scales. It's not like that. The prosecutors have agendas. Everyone's got an agenda. And you see what they did to Rabbi Eisman down here in Lakewood, how the prosecution they just had a vendetta against them, and the judge threw out all the convictions were thrown out, but he had to go through, I think, for years and years. And with Rubashkin, how they were out to get him, and how they withheld evidence to the prosecution, just like totally dishonest. But besides that, in theory, the ideas of laws in a society is that people should get along, that we should have a functioning society. If you don't have civil laws, that if you, for example, don't prosecute people when they steal things from your store, from your Walgreens, and they run amok, you can't have a functioning society. We see what happened in cities like San Francisco. If you don't punish criminals, your society is going to totally fall apart, and you'll have bums sleeping on the streets, defecating everywhere, and just your society will fall apart. So you have to have a police force, you have to have judges, you have to have ways to govern the populace. So in a secular society, these things are all practical things, just how everything works. But in the Torah, that's only the half of it. It's actually the lesser half of it. The bigger half is that when we fulfill the secular laws that are, I shouldn't say secular, the civil laws that are in the Torah, the mishpatim in the Torah, when we fulfill that, that is actually an avenue to come close to Hashem. That by fulfilling those laws, we bring Hashem into the world and get closer to God. So, you borrow in the secular society, when you borrow money and repay it, you're not doing a spiritual act. This is just how it has to happen. You borrow this way, you made an agreement, you return that way. But in the Torah, there's a mitzvah to lend somebody who needs it. There's a mitzvah not to take interest. There's a mitzvah not to pay interest. And there's laws about how to do the loan. And when you do the loan in a specific way and you follow the laws, that's actually bringing people close to Hashem, and it's bringing God's presence into the world. And these are the soldiers that follow the queen. The soldiers that follow the queen say that even after the queen leaves, meaning even after the giving of the Torah was over, right? We weren't at Mount Sinai forever. Mount Sinai happened. There was an infusion of spirituality into the world. God was with us to a degree that has never happened since. And we're not going to be in that state forever. But when we keep the laws that He gave us, and even the civil laws, even laws which seem to have nothing to do with spirituality, laws that are just, don't steal, this is how you should watch someone's object, this is how you return someone's object if you find it. So when we do it that way, that is actually keeping Hashem with us, keeping the divine presence with us. And that's what the soldiers after the queen represent, that even after the queen leaves, the soldiers come after her to show that her will is being carried out. Same thing when we fulfilled even the civil laws, it's showing that Hashem is still with us like it was at the giving of the Torah, and that His will is being carried out by us in the world. And it really is a Jew. A Jew can only be a Jew as a good Jew if he's honest and keeps the Torah laws regarding this also. And a Jew has to go above and beyond because people are out to get us. And when I go to buy junk food at the local at the local Exxon, I glance at the Asbury Park Press. I would say at least 50% of the time there's a story about Lakewood on the front page. And constantly. It sells papers. A reporter recently wrote an article where he was trying to rehumanize the known anti-Semite in Jackson, Eleanor Hannum. So I wrote to the guy how much stuff he'd left out about what she did, like how much evil stuff she did against the Jews, and how even non-Jews in the Jackson Council were calling her out for anti-Semitism. And like the article was mostly about, it said some of the negative stuff, but it was focusing on how she used to work in the kosher section of a ShopRite, and how she was friends with Jews, so therefore she couldn't be anti-Semitic. Like that, ridiculous thing that people say, which is quite offensive. Well, I'm not anti-Semitic, my best friends are Jews. I wrote them a letter, but obviously they don't care. They just want to sell papers. So my point is that besides for the fact that the Torah tells us we have to be honest, and that's how we bring godliness into the world, is by being honest, we also want to be honest for the secondary reason that people are watching us and they're out to get us. It's a very scary thing. So we don't need to give any fodder, because even if we don't do anything wrong, they make stuff up anyway. But at least there shouldn't be anything real. I've probably heard this story before. I really like it. I tell it to my students every year because we're learning Bava Metzia. Traditionally, what you start learning with kids in 5th grade is Eila Metzias, the laws about finding lost objects. That you find something that's lost, you have to return it. You can't just keep it. There's a mitzvah to return it. There's actually a prohibition. Just like there's a prohibition of eating not kosher, there's a prohibition to ignore a lost object and not return it. Like, I'm too busy, I don't want to return it. So there's a famous story where a kid went to Or Sameach, Baal Tshuva Yeshiva. He wanted to get spirituality, get close to God, and they were learning the laws of Eila Metzias, returning a lost object, and the person, this college student, was not very impressed. He said, this is not very spiritual, this is like technical legal stuff, I'm not very into this. So he went to India and went to learn by one of the gurus, one of the great Roshei gurus over there, and was in his share. And he was walking with him one day. I guess he escorted the Rebbe home. He was walking with the guru, or the yogi, I don't know what they call him. I apologize if I'm not using the proper term. I don't want to offend anybody. But the yogi's walking back, and he's walking with him, and there's someone in front. He saw his wallet dropped out of his pocket. And this fellow, the Rebbe, picked up the wallet and put it in his pocket. And the Talmud, the student, the Jewish kid says, aren't you gonna return that? That guy right there, why don't you give back to him? He's like, nope, this is a gift from the gods. And he realized that the laws of lost objects are actually quite a spiritual matter, how we treat each other. That's why Dayanim, judges, they're holy people in Judaism. They're very learned, and they have a status of spiritual people. You don't have that by non-Jewish judges. We don't give any kedusha to the Supreme Court justices. At least I hope we don't. Most people don't. Okay. So that's what we're saying. So even we should think, even when we're doing things, and just following. I mean, when you go to a bezdin paskins one way. It says this is the halacha. You're listening to the bezdin. You're following the will of Hashem, because this is how Hashem wanted civil law to be. This is not just a helter-skelter thing to make society function, but rather it's a way to bring spirituality in the world. And that's why at the end of the parsha, right? You read the parsha. It's mostly about these civil laws. If you steal and you get caught, and you're stealing a sheep, and you're stealing a cow, and you can pay kefil, daled behay, and different types of shomrim, different watchmen, shom rechinim, shom zachar, all these types of things. But in the parsha we have, it talks about Shabbos, it talks about Yontiv. You know why? Because Shabbos and Yontiv are the source of spirituality in the world. And just like Shabbos and Yontiv, we get close to Hashem, so too by following these laws we also get close to Hashem. I wanted to mention, I was going to say this last week, because Shabbos in last week's parsha also, in this week's parsha, it says, why does it say Lasos is a Shabbos? To do the Shabbos. So you say you should keep Shabbos. What does it mean to do the Shabbos? You ever think of that? I'll be honest, I never thought about it also until I saw the Beis HaLevi who asked this question. So I never thought of this. But the Beis HaLevi says like this, there's a medrash that says when Hashem created the world, He gave. So this Shabbos says to Hashem, Nasata ben zug, lekulam nasata ben zug. To everything in the world you give a partner. Velino nasati ben zug, and you didn't give. Shabbos says you didn't give me a partner. Amar Allah, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Knesset Yisrael yeh ben zugacha. He says, Hashem says to Shabbos, the Jewish people will be your partner. What does this mean? So the Beis HaLevi explains that things in the world have partners. You have male and female, because what do you have when you're male and female? You reproduce, create more. Animals reproduce, people reproduce. So Shabbos wanted to have a partner. Who was the partner? The Jewish people. Because when you have Shabbos and the Jewish people together, something reproduces. What reproduces? Hashem's presence in the world, holiness. The source of holiness in the world is through Shabbos. Because the way Hashem created the world was, first before the world, it was just Hashem. That was all. Just like divine holiness that we can't even comprehend, we can't even talk about, can't even describe. The Ein Sof or Ein Sof, crazy, holy things. Hashem created the world. He created a place where His presence is hidden, where evil could exist, where we don't always feel the closeness to God. But still, in that physical world, Hashem made a day, an opportunity to connect to Him and to bring godliness into the world, and that's called Shabbos. And the way that happens is through the Jewish people, who are God's representatives in the world. This question used to bother me. Right? Shabbos, we commemorate the creation of the world. So why do only Jews keep Shabbos? Right? The world was created for everybody. Right? And not only that, we find that people who aren't Jewish that keep Shabbos, they're not supposed to do that. Only Jews are supposed to keep Shabbos. So the reason is because it's not just, we're not keeping Shabbos just to commemorate that God created the world in 6 days, but rather Hashem created Shabbos as the vehicle that brings holiness to the world, and that is specifically the job of the Jewish people. And that's why the Jewish people alone have a special gift of Shabbos. And he says, V'heishivlo, the Knesset Yisrael Yezugecha. Hashem said to Shabbos, the Jewish people will be your mate. Da'ayde or HaKadusha shehishpia ba'olam toch habriya v'yitztarfel zeh Yisrael yisrava v'yizgala kvoda tamid b'yoser ad ki la'asa lavo yehagiloi ad sheyakiru hakol sheshem echad v'shmo echad. The light and the holiness of Shabbos, of the Jews keeping Shabbos, will bring godliness into the world until it will be filled with holiness when Mashiach comes. And this will be through the miracles What is a miracle? A miracle is Hashem bringing His presence and getting involved in the physical world. And the beginning of that is Shabbos. That's why we call it Tchila L'Mikra Kodesh. Shabbos is related to the holidays, that it's the beginning of all of the holidays. Because the holidays are also bringing holiness into the world when we commemorate miracles that happen, but that holiness all comes about from Shabbos. Shabbos is the source of all revelation of God and all miracles that happen in the world to the Jewish people. Because through the Jewish people, Hashem's glory is increased in the world. If we start Lo Yisrael Nisraba Od Yosef, and when the Jewish people keep Shabbos, the holiness keeps going on and on and on. You ever see the video of the Munkachi Rebbe in the 1930s? You see that? Go YouTube it. For those that use YouTube. Munkachi Rebbe Shabbos. Just like YouTube that or Google it. There's a video that some American filmmakers in the 1930s went to Munkach to film a documentary about Hasidic life in Europe. And they told that it was the Munkachi Rebbe's wedding. And he wanted to give a message. They were filming his daughter's wedding, and he was filming a message, so he yells in Yiddish. And it's not so much what he said, but the way he said it. He was like begging, like, my brothers in America, keep Shabbos, you have to keep Shabbos. And you just see like the sincerity in his face and how much it meant to him that Jews in America at the time, kept Shabbos. Very powerful video. Again, you don't even have to know what he's saying in Yiddish to just see what was going on. But this is also, I don't know, Menashe, should it ever bother you? L'cha Doidi. When do we sing L'cha Doidi?
Kabbalah Shabbos.
Right. What's it about? I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Yeah,
in general.
With Shabbos.
Right. What about the second half? Mikdash Melech Ir Malucha. Talks about the Beis HaMikdash. Talking about King David. Why is it talking about the Beis HaMikdash? What's the beginning makes sense, right? We're talking about Shabbos, Likar Shabbos, Lechu V'Nelcha, all these things. But all of a sudden we start talking about the Beis HaMikdash,
because the Beis HaMikdash brought us closer to Hashem.
Yes, Menashe, your tuition is well spent. Because the Shabbos is the source of holiness, bringing Hashem into the world, and that's what the Beis HaMikdash was. The Beis HaMikdash was also bringing Kedusha into the world. All the Kedusha in the world comes through Shabbos. When I was a little boy, I wasn't so little. I was a little younger than you. I was 12. I went to Rabbi Bernstein's grandfather, the Mashgiach of Lakewood, from Nosson Bachvogel. I was not yet keeping Shabbos, and he told me, he says, keep Shabbos. All your brachas will come through Shabbos. And every Saturday, we're not just celebrating that God created the world. We have a special connection with God that will keep us throughout the week. So we're saying like this, to summarize. It's also connected to Shemitah. To summarize like this, that the monetary laws we have in this week's parsha, they're not just ways to keep our society functioning, but rather when we observe them, we bring Kedusha, we bring holiness into the world. And that's why it's extremely important just to be as meticulous as we are in getting a very pretty esrog or nice tefillin or a nice lulav. We should be just as meticulous as we are in our business dealings, and we should be honest. That brings holiness into the world, just like Shabbos, and that's why Shabbos and the holidays are at the end of the parsha, because Shabbos is how we bring holiness into the world. And we know that a Jew, that's why a Jew lives. A Jew lives for Hashem, lives for bringing holiness into the world. We don't live for those other things. So the whole point in life, our whole point is Shabbos. The whole point is keeping the Torah, living honestly, and we should have a good Shabbos. That's why we have cholent. That's the secret why we have cholent Thursday nights.